Welcome to the Redhead Reveal podcast. I am Jen Pinkerton, your Redhead host, a psychotherapist, high-performance coach, writer, and speaker. As a connection expert, I help people reveal their connectedness within relationships, transforming from the root causes of beliefs and behaviors that hold them back from thriving in life. Let's talk about how you're thriving. Okay, I am so excited today to welcome Ashley Southard. She is a self-restoration therapist. She's the expert on the overfunctioning woman in love. And for all you people out there that might feel as though you overfunction, this is really going to resonate with you today. I got to tell you, Ashley, when I was following you and looking at some of your quotes and some of the things you were saying, I could immediately think of so many of my clients that this would resonate with, and so many of my audience and viewers. So I want to start with kind of just pitching one of your quotes back to you that I thought was really profound, and see if we can start with that.
Sure.
You wrote that the overfunctioning woman does the bulk of her grieving while still in the relationship with her partner. And by the time she's done and ends things, most of her grief is behind her. She's so ready to get on with her life, no longer hindered by their underfunctioning. I mean, to me, that was like a mic drop that so many people feel that way, that they're in this relationship where they might, they're basically carrying all the mental load and doing all the basically almost even masculine energy, if you're in that type of relationship, or all the leader energy. And by the time that they've checked out, they're done. And I think that leaves maybe another partner left going, what's happened? So tell us what you think
Absolutely.
about that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most popular posts that I've written. So you pulled that out very, very nicely. So I think, over functioning in love is really about trying to do the emotional work in the relationship for both of you. And it is doing for your partner what they can and should be doing for themselves, and what they can and should be doing for you in the relationship as well. But because they're not doing it, you end up coming in and trying to compensate for that. So I think what happens for a lot of overfunctioning women, this is a grieving process that takes place over years, maybe decades. And you go in and you see that they're not showing up in the way that you want or you need. So you think, all right, I'll try this, and maybe that will work. That will get them to engage. That will get them to hear me or understand me or validate me, or treat me the way I want to be treated, make this relationship feel better. And it doesn't work, right? So then you think, okay, that was painful. Let me pick myself back up. Let me go back to my resources. Let me find another strategy that I can try. And you go back in with hope and you try it again. And you do this 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 times over years and years and years. And every time you don't get met with the emotional maturity and kindness that you're needing, there's a little bit of grief that happens, right? It's like this death by 1,000 cuts. And so by the time you've gone through that thousands upon thousands of times, and you finally hit the point where you literally cannot do it anymore and you're done, you've done so much of the grieving, because you grieve in these like micro moments each time your efforts don't work or aren't matched or aren't met by your partner.
I call that chipping away. It's like chipping away
Exactly.
at the love you once had, chipping away at the connection you once had.
Yeah.
And I think so many times one person in a relationship doesn't know how to articulate that, doesn't know how to speak up in that way. And it's just this solitary sense of loss.
Totally. Absolutely. It's so lonely to be in a one-sided relationship where you feel like you're carrying the bulk of this relationship. And, it's a very painful, lonely, isolated place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for 20 years. This is your expertise about like being this burnout, overfunctioning woman to restoring yourself and helping hundreds of women do the same. And I also saw that so much of this has to do with that major decision fatigue you talk about. So explain
Yeah.
kind of that to us, what that major decision fatigue looks like.
Yeah, I think an element of overfunctioning can be kind of the mental load and the mental burden, the psychological burden of managing the relationship. And one aspect of overfunctioning can be overthinking, right? And so you're overthinking, when should I bring this up to my partner? How should I bring it up to them? What words should I use to not trigger them? How might they react? If I do it this way, if I do it at this time, what might I get? How should I handle this? If I go this way and they react that way, what's going to happen? How's that going to affect me? How's that going to affect the kids?
Mhm.
And also, if your partner isn't pulling the relationship weight, then unfortunately, a lot of the practicalities of being in a relationship together fall on you. So what's going to be for dinner is on you. What's going to happen when it's your child's birthday and they want to have a party? Who's going to organize and plan it? It's going to fall on you. So there's all of this mental load that goes into making all these decisions. And some of the decisions can be relatively small, like planning the party or figuring out dinner. And some of them can be monumental, like how do I bring up this really scary topic of how I'm feeling in the relationship and try to garner some type of helpful response from my partner. And, over time, that burns us out, right? All of the decision making that we're doing. And so it leads to this complete exhaustion. And we can feel that exhaustion mentally. We can feel that exhaustion emotionally. I think a lot of women who have been doing this a long time can also say they feel it physically. Their bodies start to feel it. And you and I, as trauma therapists, both know the body holds that. And if our emotional system isn't getting nurtured in the way that it needs, our physical body is going to scream out, and it's going to scream out in fatigue.
And I talk about so often about that very thing that, our body knows what maybe our mind represses,
Yeah,
and it will catch up to us. It
it
will.
will. Yeah,
It's
time did.
inevitable. And
Yeah.
it's inevitable. And it can be years later. It can be when you think, wait, everything else in my life's going so wonderful. Why am I feeling this way? Well, you're feeling this way because your body says enough. We've had enough.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know for me personally, I was dealing with a lot of exhaustion over the years and thinking, well, I guess this is just what it's like to be a full-time working mom. I don't know. And it wasn't until I had this really brutal wake-up call with my physician, and she said, no, you have a full-blown autoimmune disorder. And, we need to get you in with a specialist and you need to start some heavy-duty medication. I was like, oh, okay.
Wake up
And with
call.
with all of the professional training I have about how emotions and trauma and the body work, I was like, I know exactly what I need to do. And so I started really working on my stress and my emotional fatigue, my mental fatigue, and all of the trauma that I was feeling in my day-to-day life.
So, what are the techniques and strategies that you employ, that you work with clients to really start this process of that self-restoration?
Yeah. I think the first thing is to give yourself a lot of time to observe and become really aware of how does overfunctioning show up in your relationship with your partner. And certainly it will bleed out into other relationships as well. I focus on the love relationship because that's typically our closest relationship where we have the most interaction. So if there's overfunctioning happening, you're going to see it in full color right there in the love relationship. So I really invite women to start to do a really soulful inventory of how does their overfunctioning show up. Do not pressure themselves to create change yet. Just become very, very self-aware. And once they start to do that, then we work on, okay, how can you start to step back from this overfunctioning? So noticing, where are you doing for your partner what they can and should be doing for themselves? And how can you start to step back? And we start with baby steps because we want to keep our nervous system regulated, right? If we try to go in and take too big of a step, it's going to be overwhelming. We're going to collapse into some type of fear or panic. And then we just think, I can't do this. So we do small baby steps. So I might say, hey, if you're typically the one that is in charge of all of the social planning for the family, maybe you can take a little step back and maybe you can let your partner be responsible for getting the cards for their family members. And that can feel really anxiety provoking when you've been doing the constant overfunctioning. So that baby step can give your nervous system a chance to go, oh, this is what it feels like to step back in a way that doesn't have a huge consequence, right?
It's like a
And then we
small
build on
boundary,
that.
like a first boundary step that we're taking. Where, this doesn't work for me to do all these things. So I'm asking you to take on one piece.
Right. Yeah. And then the other piece with that is really working on letting your partner do with that space what they do with it. Right. And so we say, hey, I'm no longer going to be the one that picks up the birthday cards for your family. I hope that you will pick that up, and I hope that you will ensure that they get their birthday cards. And if you don't, you don't. And part of our work as self-restoring women is to let other adults experience the natural consequences of the choices that they make, and not rush in and rescue them or fix it or make it all better or do it for them. We really have to let them feel the pinch of whatever choices they make. And that can be really hard, especially as the stepping back gets more and more, the boundaries get firmer, and the stakes are higher, especially when kids are involved.
Yes, and I think that there's some growth opportunity there as well, to be able to say there may be a consequence that comes back not only to that person because they didn't do what they were supposed to do technically, but also, for the person that's setting that boundary to say, okay, this may also have a consequence to me, that my mother-in-law may be really angry.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what? I'm willing to accept that because I need this for me. I need
That's
to be able to have an identity outside of this over functioning identity that I've helped create due to the
right.
absence of having a partner that steps up.
Right. And we have to let other people have whatever feelings they have, whatever reactions they have, whatever perhaps misunderstandings or not accurate perceptions of us. We have, everyone has a right to feel and think how they feel and think. Where our power is at is in deciding if how our partner chooses to show up works for us,
Mhm.
right? It's in deciding if how another person's reaction to us works for us. And then we get to say, hey, I'm going to stick around for this, or hey, I'm not going to stick around for this, or somewhere in between. So I like to keep reminding women of where their power is at. It's not in changing the other person. It's in deciding what's going to work for you and help you feel good and safe in your own life and in your relationships.
Exactly, because we have no ability to change anyone else.
Right.
And again, that even concept of that we can has to
Mm-hmm.
do that we're functioning. It has to do with trying to be superwoman to say, you
Right.
know what, I can manage that. I can manage this part, I can manage that part, and not recognizing we just can't manage other people.
We can't. And the harder we try, the worse it gets. Right.
Yes.
So we think that the more we do for them, the more they're going to realize, wow, she's doing so much for me. Look at the sacrifices she's making for me. You know what? I think I'm going to step up more now and really, help her out. That's kind of what we tell ourselves, that more is better. When the reality is, the more we do, the more they go, hey, great, I'm glad that you're willing to take that on. I will let you. And then they continue to do less and less as we do more and more. So we have to step back and give every adult the proper space to be responsible for themselves, and then watch what they do with that and decide if that works for us.
Mhm. And it's setting a precedence, and what we allow will continue.
Yes. And it
Uh,
will grow.
yeah, exactly. So what would be some of the common signs that you would say would characterize this over-functioning woman? So for somebody listening today and they're wondering, oh, do I do that? Let's go
Mhm.
through like what are some bullet points so we can say, yeah, if you see yourself doing,
Yeah.
ABC here, this is
Yeah.
probably something that you might want to really explore.
Yeah, so I would say one of the most common traits of overfunctioning is being over focused on them and under focused on yourself, meaning the bulk of your thought processes are orbiting around them. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they needing? How might they respond to this? Are they upset? What's going to make them comfortable? How can I get them back to feeling better? At the exclusion of how am I feeling? What's going on for me? What do I need right now? So
Mhm.
this over focus on the other person and trying to predict them, figure them out, keep them happy or regulated or comfortable is a huge part of over functioning. And when we look at what are the strategies to self-restore, it's, recognizing, being aware that you're focusing a lot more on them and then bringing the focus back to yourself. And that is cringy for the over functioning woman. The first response I get is, but isn't that selfish? And I say, no, it's not selfish at all to be aware of yourself, to be paying attention to your feelings and your needs. Selfishness is when you're doing that in a way that is harmful, perhaps to somebody else, or completely at the exclusion of what's going on for them. that's not at all what we're talking about. But if you don't prioritize yourself, who's going to?
Mhm.
So over focusing on the other person is a huge trait. Another one is over giving, giving too much of your time, too much of your energy, your attention, your resources, your flexibility. You're over giving, and it's not balanced out by receiving in return, right? So
Yes, yes,
giving is a
yes.
beautiful, beautiful quality. But it has to be balanced with receiving. And the overfunctioning woman has a really hard time letting her partner or other people let her be the center of attention sometimes. The overfunctioning woman struggles to ask for help. They struggle to receive compliments or let people go out of their way for them without feeling like they have to reciprocate it right away or without feeling bad or guilty.
And I think that some of this we really have to look at, also to heal from that behavior and to change those patterns as to what is that origin point? You
Mhm.
know, what is
Absolutely.
this doing for you and giving you? Is it your identity? Is it a sense of being needed? Did you grow up feeling as though you only got that love maybe in your family of origin, in your attachment love lessons? Did you learn that that was your worth, was doing,
Right.
performing? There's so many traces of that I think we can look back of where that starts. And I think that inner child work kind of ties into how do we really recreate the different version of us, the version of this over-functioning woman that instead looks like someone that actually prioritizes her own needs. Because the question of when did you ever learn how to betray yourself is pretty valid, because that's in essence what an over-functioning woman is doing,
Yeah. That's right. And it does not start in our partnership as adults. You and I both know that this has early life roots in some way, shape, or form. And we know that because our attachment system is forming in those early years where we're learning, how does love work? How do relationships work? How do I work in relationships? And what do I need to do to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel understood? So we learn these strategies vis-a-vis our parents, our primary attachment figures, our caregivers, key adults in our life. And then we unknowingly, take on these rules of how we think the relationships need to go and what we need to do to get that love. And then we transfer that right over into our partnerships. And we don't realize we're doing this. This is all subconscious. But we end up repeating a lot of those same patterns with our partner, and then we're like, how did we get here, right? I just want to be happy and in love. How did I get to a place where I'm so miserable and so alone and so upset?
So, what was your turning point? What was the moment where you recognized I'm burnt out? I can't do this anymore. I'm betraying myself. I'm over functioning. I'm not thriving. What was that moment for you? Because I think expressing what that moment was for you that started you on this path is a very eye-opening thing to someone else to maybe recognize, where is my moment? Where is my pivotal path, fork in the road to say, I can live a very different life.
Yeah. Wow, I would say there were actually many moments. There were many key moments along the way in my personal life. I met my partner at age 18, so we were babies, and then we got married at 24, and we were married into our early 40s. So my entire adulthood was wrapped around life with this person. There were many moments where I thought, I'm burnt out. I can't do this anymore. This isn't working for me. But I had everything poured into this relationship. And so I would have this moment, and then I would have the fear and the overwhelm, and quite frankly, the denial. And I don't say that in a judgmental way, but just a sense of like, no, 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 it can't be that bad that I would just throw all of this away. Surely there's an answer here. And so I would have the moment, and then I would keep going. And the final moment came when I really was completely tapped out. And then there was a transgression in the relationship that just crossed a line for me. And it was like, that's it. Trust has been broken, and I don't have anything in me to even consider working on rebuilding that trust. I literally don't have it in me. So at that point, whatever the unknown was in front of me had to be better than the misery and the exhaustion and the depletion that I was in. I was terrified. I was overwhelmed. I had no idea how I was going to navigate this, but I knew it couldn't be worse than the absolute low I was in.
And I'm really glad you said that because I think the fear of the unknown is something that keeps many women specifically from thinking that life could be different. You know, there's a fear of that. It's what is this going to look like? And
Totally.
I think that so much of that has to do with really amping up your core belief system about who you are. And, I always say, remember who the fuck you are. I always say that's
Exactly.
so important to really know that so that you're not blinded by these roles and responsibilities, and you don't reduce yourself to a place to not understand that you can live this big and bold and bright life.
Yeah, and it's interesting being a therapist. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I've got 20 years of experience. I'm armed with all the tools. I'm highly trained in lots of different models around treating trauma and couples. You would think like, I've got everything that I need to say, oh, I can do this. I don't have any fear. I got this. No, I was terrified of how I was going to do this. And so I say that to normalize the absolute fear that I think most people feel when you're venturing into uncharted territory. What I had to do was decide that I was just going to do things scared for a while. And I was going to lean upon my supports, which thank goodness I had an incredible support system around me. And I did just that. I mean, I leaned on people to go to the Verizon store with me. I was that overwhelmed with fear and how can I do all of this and the logistics. I was ushering a child through this process as well. But you know what? I worked on my receiving skills and I said, hey guys, I need help right now. And they said, we are right here. And they were, and we got through it. And I think it's in going through the hard things that you realize, oh, yeah, I actually am a badass and I actually can do this. But you don't realize that until you go through it. So being willing to do it scared, being willing to feel uncomfortable and overwhelmed, and being willing to let people rally around you, it's how I got through. Even with all the skills and knowledge that I had, I needed to rely on my support and do it scared.
And you're human last time I checked. So,
Yeah,
this idea
exactly. We're
that
not
someone,
immune.
right, that someone that's in this space can't also struggle is just not realistic. But
That's
I
right.
really like the do it scared. I've really never verbalized that way, but I like that to be able to say do it scared because then we're still going through. The only way out it, is through it, and to be able to recognize it's okay to be absolutely terrified. It doesn't mean
It's
it wasn't the
normal.
right decision.
That's right. And it's normal. We could get into the brain science of you are going to feel fear. You are going to feel terrified and overwhelmed. And if you wait until you don't feel that, you're going to wait your entire life because we have an entire nervous system dedicated to keeping us safe and out of threat. So what does it do to try to keep us in our comfort zone? It terrifies us anytime we look at something new or anytime we consider change. So we do have to wrap our head around this idea of, okay, if I'm going to create a magical life for myself, then I'm going to have to do some big things really scared. And I can do that and I can handle that. And that's where the techniques and the skills come in handy. So how do you usher yourself through when you're scared? You call upon your support, you do your breathing. I took more walks than I can count at that time to help my body kind of regulate all of that fear.
Right. I mean, our nervous system can either be our very best friend or our worst enemy, depending on the situation and how we look at it.
That's right.
And it's important, I think, to know, to have that psychoeducation, understand that you are going to feel afraid. You're going to feel
Absolutely.
afraid. And this is outside of the role you've created for yourself, you know? And I don't
Yeah.
think we can talk about overfunctioning without also talking about how this relays into maybe your intimate life, the passion in your life. Because if you have that role and you carry that burden, it's going to be very difficult to have that emotional connection with your partner. Talk
That's
about
right.
that a little bit, what you see with that.
In terms of having an emotional connection with them.
Right. When you're carrying this load, when you are over functioning.
Yeah, well, it feels virtually impossible because you're actually holding this really dichotomous and complicated emotional space of I want so badly to love you. And yet at the same time, I'm resenting you because I'm doing all of this for you. I'm not getting in return what I want. When I do try to talk to you, I'm not getting the responses that feel helpful. So the overfunctioning woman is like, what do I do with all of these feelings, right? Do I lean in? Do I wall up my heart? What do I do? And oftentimes women will tell me like, yeah, I vacillate. Sometimes it can feel minute to minute, hour to hour. I can love my partner, and then hours later, I'm like so angry and I hate them. And
Mhm.
so, of course, that creates a lot of emotional disconnection. I think ultimately what can happen in this dynamic is it feels so emotionally unsafe. The underfunctioning partner can feel very unpredictable. They can feel very selfish. They can feel very checked out and misattuned. And that does not feel safe. And so you never really know, can I lean in? Can I let my guard down? Am I going to get my head bitten off today? Are they going to be really nice? Because absolutely, they have their times where they're really kind and engaged, and then times where they're really not. So all of that wreaks havoc on that emotional connection and the vulnerability and the emotional intimacy.
And then that translates over into actual sex as well, because, there's also a role we're not talking about here. Sometimes that overfunctioning can start to feel like a parent-child relationship, can start to feel like
Absolutely.
mommy,
Yeah.
and little child. And that doesn't create an environment that is
No, it's
sexy.
not
Okay.
sexy.
It's not. And then, that partner's left wondering, hey, why don't you want to have sex with me? Well, I'm over functioning at this high level, and I don't look at you as my equal partner.
That's right. Yeah, I like to say you can't be their parent by day and then expect to be their partner by night. It just doesn't work that way. And so, this goes in both directions. For the overfunctioning woman, she's got to step back from being the parent and the mom, right? So that we can create some space for
Right.
some connection and some intimacy. And the underfunctioning partner has to take responsibility for themselves and stop looking to their partner to be their mom and to do everything for them. So it
That's
goes
so
both ways.
important. Like, I want to really, for people who miss that, you cannot be the partner at night. If during the day you were over functioning, you're doing everything else. Give us that exact quote. How did you say it? Because you did it so perfectly. You can't be your parent by day and your partner at night. Is that right? I
Yeah.
think that is really profound. And that's a great way, I think, to really quickly look, is that how I'm feeling? Is
Yeah.
that what this feels like to me?
Mhm. That's right. And, your partner may look to you to be the parent during the day, and you have the power to say, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Mhm.
I'm not going to remind you anymore. I'm not going to do these things for you anymore. I'm not going to be the only one who brings up the important and necessary conversations in this relationship. So I'm going to do my part, and I expect you to do your part. And if we can't meet there emotionally during the day, then it's only reasonable to expect that we're really not going to be able to meet in the bedroom at night.
Mhm. And I think that also translates even further, because if you think about, okay, this is my role, this is your role, we're not equals. Sometimes I think it turns into almost, if you're talking about a relationship in this way, it's like almost you can emasculate. If you're with a male partner, you're going to emasculate them. And so then I think there's also can become resentment on the underfunctioning partner.
Absolutely.
And it's almost as though, well, wait a minute, I'm doing the things I thought I needed to do to overfunction, but yet now I've created this too. And so then there's added resentment. And I think sometimes that piece gets missed. And then that partner's saying that, and maybe the other overfunctioning partner's like, you're kidding me. I have been being superwoman, but now you're feeling this way?
Absolutely. Yeah. The overfunctioning woman can say, oh my gosh, I've given you everything that I can possibly give you and then some. And you have the audacity to resent me. But
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. The underfunctioning partner often is harboring their own resentment. They will show it in a very different way. So they might be more inclined to retreat, to shut down, to not talk about it. And then it comes out sideways in maybe an aggressive comment or a dismissive comment or something like that. But yeah, they're harboring their own emotional experience in this relationship, and their work is to figure out what that is and to put words to it, and then go back to their partner and say, hey, this is what's going on for me. This is what I'm feeling, and this is what I'm needing. But unfortunately, too often, I don't see that happening. And so that resentment on their end doesn't get worked through.
And some of these things could probably be so easily addressed if couples actually had the hard conversations in the beginning. You know, the conversations that say, hey, oh, we're moving in together. Hey, we're going to get married. Let's go over these roles and responsibilities. Let's talk about these are things that I'm comfortable doing. I excel here. I like this. Maybe I don't really want to do these things. And vice versa. What are things that you are happy taking on to do, but you really don't want to do that? And I'm happy to do that. Having this equitable arrangement. But I feel like those conversations, which I call them the business of marriage conversations,
Right. Yeah.
tend to be ignored because most people, when they get together, they're swept up into a lot of, neurochemicals running through their body, all this oxytocin, all these dopamine hits, all these things that feel so fun and the lust and the limerence of the beginning of a relationship. But then all these very specific things that are going to contribute way more than that lust and neurochemicals, the things that are going to last a longer time become totally left out of the conversation.
It's so true. And, I think the challenge here, and this is maybe my bias as a therapist, but I think the challenge is because we have this kind of childhood programming, this attachment style and programming that we get early on, we don't even realize early on in our relationship the dynamics and the foundation that we're setting. We don't even realize all of these micro moments where we are over accommodating and over giving and over focusing on them, right? We just do it. It's our autopilot. It's like the air that we breathe. We don't even realize it. So it's almost like we don't even realize we need to have those conversations or that we need to hammer out all of these details until we're so far in and the relationship feels so far gone. Then we go, oh man, this is what's going on. So I think that's the tricky part here is when, like you said, you're swept up in the emotions, things feel good, but also you're coming into a relationship with this huge emotional and psychological reserve. It's like, oh, they did this little thing and it didn't feel good. It's fine. I'm just going to let it go. I don't need to dwell on that. And that's fine, maybe the first 100 times you do that. But as you do that for years and years and years, there's a pile up effect. And that really does take a toll. So I wish there was a way that our whole society could make these patterns more conscious so that we could have those conscious conversations early on and know that this is a thing that we need to talk about. And I think unfortunately we just do our autopilot and we don't realize that our autopilot isn't working until we're so in it and we're so wounded by then, right? We've had so much history of pain and resentment.
And maybe that pain and resentment is also done in complete solitary confinement, and the other partner has no idea.
No idea.
Mm-hmm. I think
Yeah.
that this all is about balance and
Mhm.
recognizing that this relationship, all relationships need balance.
Yeah.
But, what do we do to achieve that? Where are we with that? And I
Yeah.
think that there's often an unequitable situation that happens too. If maybe one partner is the primary breadwinner, then there's an idea that, okay, well, I'm doing this, so then you're going to handle everything else. And while in theory, there might be an idea of, okay, I need to maybe pull more weight here because they're doing this, but that doesn't mean all the weight. And I see that so often in clients that they end up taking the entire load and it doesn't work. That is not equitable. And it creates such an imbalance and such a sense of resentment and pain and grief. And then the ultimate loss.
Absolutely. And I think the key in a really healthy, functioning, emotionally balanced relationship is if and when things feel off balance, because they will. That is inevitable in a relationship, whether it's unbalanced in, the division of tasks and labor, like you're saying, or unbalanced in any other way. What we're really needing here is a sense of emotional safety to A, be aware within ourselves that, hey, this isn't feeling good. And I have a right to bring that to my partner because my feelings and my needs matter. That's
Mhm.
an area where the overfunctioning woman can really struggle.
Yes.
She gaslights herself, she minimizes things within herself. But to be aware of that feeling and that need, to then feel safe going to your partner and saying, hey, can we talk about this? I know this was the arrangement. I know this is how we've been doing things, but it's not feeling good for me now. Can we maybe talk about how we can make some adjustments so that I can feel better, and to trust that our partner is going to say, absolutely. I'm not sure what the answer is, or that kind of scares me to talk about changing that, or that makes me uncomfortable. But yes, your feelings and your needs matter to me. So let's sit down and figure this out. And that both partners have that safety that anytime they can bring their feelings and needs to the other and it will be received. Doesn't mean that they're always going to get exactly what they want, but it will at least be heard and understood and responded to.
And what I hear you saying that I want to really make sure it's highlighted is that a healthy relationship has the dynamic that if we go to our partner and say, this isn't working for me, I'm unhappy in this way, or I feel, this is a big deficit in our relationship, a healthy relationship listens and validates those feelings, even if the answer is not obvious, even if there isn't an instant way of how we're going to solve it. There's a sense of you can always feel safe to come to me with your feelings. And I may not know exactly what to do, but I'm going to have a container for those. I'm going to hold space for you. We're going to talk about it. We're going to be connected in a fair and partnership where we feel like we care about each other's feelings. And I think that's so important to recognize, because so many people look at everything else in their relationship. Oh, we have great sex. Oh, we have a lot of fun together. Oh, we have a family. We're raising a family. And we hear that all the time. We've got kids. We have a good life. We have similar dreams or goals. Great. But if there's the lack of emotional safety, the lack of the component of being able to connect in that way, what really do you have?
What do you have? Yeah, and the healing has to start within. You have to create emotional safety within yourself first before you can expect all of that to come from the relationship. And creating emotional safety within yourself from the perspective of self-restoration with the overfunctioning woman is saying, my feelings and my needs matter. And not gaslighting yourself and saying, I don't know, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm needing too much. Maybe I'm just too needy. Maybe I should blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
instead saying, okay, this feeling is coming up, so I honor it. This need is here, so I honor it. That's how you create emotional safety within. And then you respond to those feelings and needs by saying, okay, let me do what I need to do to then honor these feelings, get these needs met, whether that's something I can do for myself, or in this case, something I need to go to my partner with. So we have to create that emotional safety within, and then we have to expect that from our relationship. And oftentimes when I'm working with overfunctioning women, they don't even realize that emotional safety is a thing that they not only desire in their relationship, but deserve.
Absolutely. And knowing that that is your inherent power. I really feel like we have to look at that as our power. Our power is our feelings, our emotions, being self-aware, being self-reflective. We can't just give that away as though it's non-existent. It has to be something that we harness and we hold dear. And we recognize that that is what's needed for us to live a life where we're thriving.
Right. And it's also what we need if we are in a one-sided relationship with an underfunctioning partner who maybe isn't interested in self-development and growing themselves and evolving themselves. So maybe you do get to a place where you're brave enough to go to them and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm needing. Can we work on this? And you get met with the dismissiveness and the defensiveness and the shutting you down and telling you all of the reasons why you're the problem and why you're wrong. That emotional safety within yourself then is what bolsters you to say, no, that is not acceptable. I am not going to agree with what you're saying. I'm not going to spin out into a bunch of self-doubt and wonder if maybe you're right. I am going to honor my feelings and be really convicted in what I know is true for me. And, my partner can have whatever truths are true for them, but I am not going to abandon and betray myself anymore.
I really love the way you articulated that, because I think that if more women felt that way about themselves and would be willing to put that out on the line, they would see a transformation in their life, even if that transformation is, I'm no longer with that partner, but now I feel good about myself and my inherent worth to be able to attract a different type of partner.
And sometimes it might really shake up the dynamic in your relationship for the better. That does happen sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it doesn't. But like you said, when you are doing the work within yourself to create that safety and to have standards and to respect yourself, whatever happens in the relationship, you have this inherent knowing inside that I'm going to be okay and I'm going to figure this out. And that's what I anchored into when I tried everything and it wasn't quote unquote working. And so I had to face the uncertainty in my personal decision. And I just anchored into like, okay, Ash, you are going to figure this out. And I did.
And you did.
And I
All
did.
right. So those people who are hearing this today and this is resonating with you, I want them to look you up, to find you on Instagram. We'll have all of it in the show notes. I want to leave with the question, the guest question that was left for you. We do that every time, and then you leave one for a future guest. So I want to serve this up for you here. What is a time that you were very upset and another person's presence changed the way you were feeling in your body?
Oh, I can think of so many times, especially as I was going through my divorce process. From a physical somatic body perspective, when I was in the presence of an emotionally safe other, someone who I knew I didn't have to protect my heart with them because my heart was safe with them. My body could, it would go from revved up, tingly, racing thoughts, racing heart, overwhelmed. I can't do this. I just need to shut it all down. And in the presence of this safe other, it was like, okay, maybe I can exhale. Maybe I can breathe. Maybe I can do this. So they gave me this sense of energy that I could keep going when I thought maybe I couldn't. And my body relaxed just enough to be able to find my way through. That's what they did
That's
for me.
beautiful, beautiful. And we all probably really need to think about who is our safe other.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we need them. And the overfunctioning woman does not need to be the superwoman who does it all on her own. That doesn't work. And no one's going to get a badge of honor at the end of life for having done it all themselves.
Isn't that true? All right. What question do you want to leave for a future guest?
Well, maybe on a somewhat related note, I would say, what are the ingredients for you to feel emotionally safe in a love relationship?
That's interesting. I like
Hmm.
that. Okay, we'll see what the future guest does with that question.
Or maybe it's a question that our listeners can ponder as well. You know, what makes a relationship feel emotionally safe to you, and start to give yourself permission to require that.
It's a great definition to really explore. I completely agree with you. Okay, for those of you who are looking for this self-restoration and love, reach out to Ashley. Thanks so much for being here with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
talk to you soon.